So webinar is started for everybody now.
Yeah, let people come.
Recording in progress.
What has been the normal numbers when you did programs with other organizations?
So it remains on the same lines of around, let's say attendees are between 80 to 120 kind of attendees on a session. It depends on various factors, right? What time of the day this has been done, which day it has been done, where and all we have promoted this across. But on an average, we see around 80 to 120 between that range.
I have also noted, like once we do get a lot of registration, but the people actually attending falls by, huge margin. Like comes up to sometimes 50%. Very rarely I've seen.
Yeah, so we generally take a ratio of 1:4, which means around if 4 people are registering, there will be one person who will be attending. So, I mean, that's a good logic to go after.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you have presentations or just the lecture part?
We have a presentation.
Yeah,
we have a presentation.
Tarinder, should we wait or we can just start?
Yeah, we'll just start.
So please, Tarinder, go ahead.
Good evening to all the participants. We are here for the next session of our masterclass series, and this is basically focused on the cross-border payments. We have two young guys with us, Mrinal and Amit, taking up the session for us, and they'll be covering on international bank accounts, how the project closure, payment closures happen, vendor payments, account management, and other varied topics. After that, there's going to be a question answer session, and all answer questions in the chat box, and you can raise your hand to answer that. And among trainers, we have Amit Arora, who is leading the international sales team for South Asia and MENA region. And he has a long experience of 12 years for payments, e-commerce, commercial real estate, and hospitality industries. So welcome, Amitji, for the session. And we have Minal Sharma also carrying up from Payoneer, and he also has a huge experience coming from IIT, and he will also be covering part of the session with him. He has also worked with Delhi government in public policy advisory role for 2 years. So welcome, Minal.
Thank you very much.
We have our DG sir, Dr. Abhay Sinha, with us. He will be closing the event and a few words of advice for if anything left out by these two young chaps. So over to Amit and Minal. And if Dr. Abhay wants to say a few words in the beginning, then over to him. And after that, we can begin the session.
Thank you, Tarinder. In fact, I'll wait for the last part of the program to say. When we have experts, I don't have anything else to say.
Sure. So Amit and Minal, over to you. You can share the screen and carry on the session, please.
Yes.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Kaur and Dr. Abhay, for providing us with this opportunity to interact with the community and pass on the information or knowledge what we have. And we will try our best to of our abilities to share the knowledge what we have in helping our community to do better in their businesses, specifically related to cross-border payments, because the word itself, it's a small word, but it's a very complex process which gets involved, right? So we will be today taking you through the entire audience through the entire processes in which how the cross-border payment goes across, what are the various challenges, etc., which are faced. And like Dr. Kaur said, we come from a company called Payoneer, and we specializes into B2B cross-border payments, where we assist communities, service sector communities to good sector communities to help to get their payments in a much more economical and a faster way. Also providing a lot of technology support in the current world scenario of receiving payments. Mrinal, if you can just move to the next slide, please. Next one. Yeah, so like I said, today in our agenda, we will try to cover the overview of cross-border payments in terms of what does basically the cross-border payments means, how it is different from the remittances which are sent from peer-to-peer and for business to business and business to customers and all those factors. What are the various methods in which the payments can be received in India from abroad? What are the typical challenges which the community faces, or the individuals or the freelancers or the service provider community faces? What are the best practices in which you can have a smooth experience of receiving the cross-border payments and utilizing the maximum effects out of it? And a brief about us in terms of what we do and how we as a partner can assist businesses and the service community to receive payments in a much more better way. Next one, Mira. So yeah, from here, my colleague Brinal will take you through on this one, and anything which is required, we can keep on. Please keep dropping your questions in the chat box, and we will be happy to answer them after the session.
Thank you very much, Amit. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for investing time, and thank you for joining us for this masterclass on cross-border payments. Before we deep dive into the subject matter, let's set the ground rules for what cross-border payments actually are. Essentially, cross-border payments are those transactions in which
yes, certainly.
Well, you can continue.
Yeah, thank you. Let's set the ground rules on what exactly cross-border payments are. Essentially, a cross-border transaction is one in which a receiver and a payer are present in different countries. For example, a use case is a company which provides website development solutions to a company in the US has delivered the project and now wants to receive payments from the US-based company. So this transaction, which will ultimately happen in return for the website development, will be called as a cross-border payment. So cross-border payments, as it suggests, are extremely crucial for those businesses from India and abroad who provide services to their clients who are present in a country not the same as the service provider's country. And if we talk about receiving international payments, generally there are multiple modes. One is a widespread channel, which is bank transfers, bank wire transfers. So essentially what happens is the payer is in country A, receiver is in country B, and payer A can make a bank wire transfer to a receiver in country B. The other mode of making or receiving a cross-border payment is through a payment service provider. Companies involved in cross-border transaction can partner with a payment service provider and can use this payment service provider's platform to receive and send cross-border payments. This could be a payment gateway, it could be a global payment gateway, could be a billing solution, could be a payment service provider. There are multiple options, and we'll talk about them in the coming slides. And of course, when a business is engaged in cross-border payments, it's extremely important that the business chooses the right kind of payment method and the right payment partner for the payments based on the business profile of the service provider, the profile of the receiver of the service, which will ultimately be the payer, and the types of payments that are supported from in the geographies that they are present in. Now let's take a look at some of the popular methods that are used to collect cross-border payments. We have tried to categorize cross-border payments into multiple buckets. One is, of course, bank transfers, international bank transfers, in which one bank, the payer's bank account is in country A and the receiver's bank account is in country B, and their bank wire payments are used. Second method, or one more method, is one in which payer and receiver might be different countries, but the receiver has a bank account in the payer's country. And third, of course, is the credit card and debit card payments, which happen from one country to the other. So let's take a look at the first one, which we are calling local bank transfer. Now, what is a local bank transfer? So again, there's a receiver who has provided, let's say, a service such as either website development or software development or digital marketing, travel booking, it could be edtech, and multiple other services that fall under the umbrella of services. And so on the one hand, we have a service provider. On the other hand, we have a receiver of the services. And in this case, in the case of local bank transfers, the service provider has a bank account in the country of the payer. So the service provider is present in the two parties are present in different countries, but service provider has a bank account in the payer's country. So here within the local bank transfer, there are two major methods that are generally used by businesses. The first is direct debit. To understand the concept of direct debit, we can take the example of physical checks. Now, what happens when you give a physical check to someone as a mode of payment? A physical check is a guarantee that a payer gives to the receiver, that the receiver can take a check to a bank account and encash it, and in return for that, receive payment. Direct debit is the electronic mode of a physical cash. So essentially what happens is that the payer, the party that is about to make a payment, authorizes the receiver to encash or pull funds from payer's bank account. For example, let's say there's a company which provides website development services to another company B in the US. Now, this company B has a bank account in the US. What this company B will do is they'll use the direct debit method and will authorize company A to pull funds from company B's bank account. Now, this is a pull mechanism in which the receiver is authorized to receive, to pull out payments from sender's bank account. So this is called direct debit. Now, there are some advantages, such as let's say direct debit payment method is very easy to set up. You can set up automatic debits also, and you can set up recurring payments also through direct debit payment method. The major disadvantage that a direct debit method has is that it takes longer than usual, longer than most of the payment methods to process a payment. Plus, I believe most of us might have used physical checks. So there's always a risk of a check bounce. Similarly, in direct debit payments, there is a risk of a payment being failed or a payment failing due to insufficient funds in the payer's bank account, the paying entity's bank account. So it's very important that the paying entity has sufficient balance in their bank account to be able to process a direct debit payment. Since it's a standing instruction, what happens is that the information of payer's bank balance is revealed only after some time. It could also take a few days. So initially, it would look like that a payment has been processed, but there are some risks that a lack of balance might be revealed in the next few hours or next few days. So it's very important that the payer has sufficient balance. From direct debit, let's talk about direct bank transfer now. Now we saw that direct debit is a pull mechanism in which the receiver pulls funds from payer's bank account. Bank transfer is opposite of that. Now again, please be mindful that we are discussing the case wherein both receiver and payer have bank account in the same country. So now within this, a bank transfer is a push method in which the payer who has received services would instruct his or her bank to transfer funds from his or her bank account to receiver's bank account. Here, it's not an authorization that has been given to the receiver to pull funds. It's an instruction given by payer to push funds from payer's bank account to receiver's bank account. This is pretty straightforward. We all use it in India in the form of NEFT or IMPS, in which imagine I use HDFC. Now, if I want to make an NEFT transfer to anyone, I'll simply go to my online banking portal and add the receiver as beneficiary and process funds. So it's pretty straightforward. The advantages are, of course, the payment is fast and there's trackability in the payment. Plus, the biggest advantage is that since receivers and payers' bank accounts are in the same country, this payment method is extremely cost effective. So there are no wire fees. There are no wire fees involved. There are no intermediary bank fees involved, and there are multiple other complications that are taken care of because payer and receiver have a bank account in the same country. Typically, there are no disadvantages here. It's just that from some countries, it's possible that their bank transfer methods take a few days, probably 2 or 3 business days to process a payment, but that's about it. Bank transfers are the safest payment method, especially when the receiver and payer have this bank account in the same country. So that's the major differentiator here. Now, let's talk about wire transfers. The major differentiator between a wire transfer and a local bank transfer is that in wire transfer, the receiver's bank account is in a country different from payer's bank account. Hence, generally, the SWIFT network is used to process international bank wire transfers. I'll repeat, in the previous section, we saw that in local bank transfers, the receiver and payer have bank accounts in the same country. But in wire transfers, bank wire transfers, receivers and payers have bank accounts in different countries. So that's a major differentiator. Since bank accounts are in different countries, there are times, in fact, more often than not, there are multiple banks involved in between. And during the transaction, there are multiple banks that authorize and process a transfer from a bank account in one country to a bank account in another country. The advantages of international wire transfers are, as usual, they're secure and reliable, they're fast, and traditionally, either due to habit or perception or the safety provided by international banks, the wire transfer method is used for transacting large payments. The disadvantages are it is difficult to trace, since from one country to the other, a payment is being processed in which multiple parties are involved. So there are multiple intermediary banks. There's an issuing bank. There's an acquiring bank, and multiple intermediary banks in the middle. So it sometimes becomes difficult to track. And due to the presence of intermediary bank accounts, there could be additional fees in between. So this is again one major difference between local bank transfer and international wire transfer. In local bank transfers, since the receiving bank account and paying bank account are in the same country, there are no intermediary banks involved. Hence, there's no intermediary bank fee. But in the wire transfer, there are intermediary banks involved. Hence, more often than not, there are hidden fees, which are generally either processing fees or intermediary bank fees or some other miscellaneous fees, landing fees, etc. The third category, which is different from bank transfers, is payments through credit or debit card. Generally, credit or debit card payments are used for small transactions. And a small transaction could be $10, $20, $50, $100. It could be $500, it could be $1,000. But generally, when the size of a payment, a cross-border payment, increases to, let's say, $2,000 or $5,000 or $10,000, people or involved parties do not typically rely on credit or debit card payments, primarily because they're expensive. So since to process a credit or debit card payment, a payment gateway is needed. And what is a payment gateway? A payment gateway is a third-party payment service provider that is a connection between payer's bank and receiver's bank. So payment gateway authorizes a payment, verifies a payment, collects information between issuing bank and receiving bank, and also connects the involved parties to a card network. Now, what is a card network? Most of us might use a credit card or a debit card issued by Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, JCB, etc. So these companies, which are Visa, MasterCard, American Express, etc., are called card networks or card providers. So these companies have a large network of cards, have a large network of card payment infrastructure, and typically a payment gateway allies with these companies to process card payments. The biggest advantage of credit or debit card payment is that this whole system is easy to set up. And in the case of most payment gateways, it's a self-serve experience. It's not complicated. You can register on a payment gateway, you can get an account, and you can simply start either processing or receiving a payment. Now, as I talked about some of the disadvantages, the top is that since there's a payment gateway involved and there are card payments involved, this whole method of using card to pay is expensive. And it could go as high as 8% per payment, 10% per payment, or even higher from some countries. Plus, since there are card payments involved, we all know that there's a phenomenon called card payment failure. So either due to something wrong from the issuing bank, or from if a card user hasn't entered the correct information while processing a payment, or there's something wrong that a card network feels, it could be Visa, MasterCard, American Express, or any of the other card networks, or let's say there's something wrong with a payment gateway or the merchant or the acquiring bank, a card payment can fail. And unless you choose the right payment gateway, and there's a plethora of payment gateways in the market, trust me. So unless you choose the right payment gateway, it's possible that you will experience a lot of payment failures. So what happens is a payer tries to pay, but the payment does not get authorized due to a number of reasons, and the payment doesn't go through. So either a payer tries again, or the payer has to contact his or her bank to process a payment. So in such cases, complexity arises. So this was a brief overview on the various payment methods that are prevalent across the industry in cross-border payment market. So let's move on and see what we have. All right. So let's take a look at a typical journey of a payment which begins once a service or product has been delivered to the receiver, a receiver of the services. And this receiver of the services, who is also a payer now, one who has to pay, embarks on the journey to make a payment. So the first stage is customer purchase. So you are providing a service and you have a client in the US or Europe, Australia, or anywhere across the world. You have delivered, let's say, a website to them, or a software to them, or travel booking to them, hotel booking, etc. Anything. Now they want to pay to you. So this journey starts by the receiver, the payer, initiating a payment either through their bank or using their card through a payment gateway, or a direct debit or local bank transfer, right? So as we've discussed, a payment could be in multiple formats. There are multiple ways to send a payment or receive a payment. So at this stage, there are issues of security and chargeback. So it's very important that the payment partner that you're using, either for bank transfer or a card transfer, it is very important that your payment partner provides the right kind of data support system plus financial security system for financial security. When I say financial security, it means how your partner ensures the safety of a payment. So how they ensure that a fraud does not occur from any of the involved parties involved, and how does your payment partner ensure that a transaction goes through smoothly and there are no chargebacks or there are no complaints later and there are no disputes later. So that's the first thing. Second, we come to payment routing. Now, payment routing is essentially the second step wherein a payment has been initiated. Now it has to embark on the process of verification and processing. So many a time we see that cross-border payments are time-taking. There's difficulty in tracking. Plus, as we discussed in the case of Swift wire transfers, many a time there are high intermediary bank fees. So there are intermediary bank fees, there are landing fees, there are multiple other fees that typically involved parties are not involved because they're hidden. Third, the stage where we reach is payment approval. Now, for payment approval, it is very important that the party that is making a payment, either through bank transfer or card transfer, it's important that this party's credibility is strong with all the banks involved. So either it's a bank transfer or it's a card transfer, it needs to be understood that banks are involved everywhere. And banks are the first financial, you could say either financial regulator or financial party that that verifies the payer, verifies the receiver, verifies the payment, and approves the payment. So there are multiple layers there. So either whether it's a card payment or a bank transfer, banks are inevitably present. And it's very important that payer and receiver have high credibility with the involved banks. In the same stage, sometimes when businesses use a third-party payment service provider, typically the customer service is not good enough. So what happens is, let's say, I'll give you a use case. Let's say a payer makes a card transfer using a payment gateway. Let's say it could be payment gateway A. And the receiver, the payer tells the receiver that he or she has initiated a payment, but the receiver is unable to see that payment on his or her dashboard provided by the payment gateway. In such cases, the receiver would typically try to connect with the customer service or a relationship manager from the payment gateway. So it's very important that this service is smooth and efficient. But what we see in the cross-border payments are the customer service is typically not up to the mark. The fourth stage, customer confirmation. Now, as I said, there are multiple steps that are involved in approval. So once the approval happens on the side of the payer, on the side of receiver, a notification is sent to the receiver as well as the payer. This process in many cases is extremely time-taking when you are not working with the right payment platform. It could be a problem with the bank, it could be a problem with the payment gateway, but it's very important to choose the right payment platform for your international payments. Otherwise, the time elapsed is the biggest challenge that comes up. Finally, we reach the stage when a settlement of payment happens. At this stage, the conversations arise related to currency conversion rates. So since we're talking about cross-border payments, currency conversion is involved. And either it's a bank, whether it's a bank or a payment gateway, every party charges for currency conversion. So you need to be aware of what your payment gateway or what your bank charges you for converting the currency for your payments. So it's very important to be aware of this. In the case of payment gateways, many a time it's not transparent as to what fee they would charge for currency conversion. Same is the case with banks. What you would typically see is the payment that was initiated and the INR that you might have received at the end. But you don't know what currency conversion that your bank used to convert your currency, to convert the foreign funds into the domestic currency. So it's very important that you're aware of this. Then we talked about hidden costs. Hidden costs could be, as I said, intermediary bank fee. It could be a landing fee. It could be miscellaneous fees such as fees to generate bank statement or payment gateway, your payment statement. There could be fees for application. There could be rolling reserves that payment gateways typically use to hedge against payment failure or chargebacks or other disputes. So rolling reserve is also a major portion. So what happens is, let's say you received $1,000 from through your payment gateway. Now, many a time that payment gateway will not withdraw whole of the $1,000 to your bank account. they'll keep some portion of it as a rolling reserve. It could be $10, it could be 20, it could be 100, it could be 200. There's no control on that. Why they do is to hedge themselves against, let's say, a chargeback or a dispute or anything else. So they would transfer, let's say, $900 to you and keep the $100 as a rolling reserve, which will be transferred to you after some time. So that's also a challenge. Finally, there's the issue of reconciliation. Now, in India, service providers have to comply with the GST infrastructure. Under GST, in most cases, from what we know, the exporters, especially service exporters, are exempt from paying GST. But the major problem is that a service exporter needs to prove that a payment has happened in return for an export. In order to do that, it's very important that your payment service provider provides you with a certificate that proves that you've received a payment in return for an international service that you provide. Generally, this certificate is called FIRC, which is Foreign Inward Remittance Certificate. And there are various methods in which some of the payment gateways provide this. But it's very important that the process is smooth, timely, and the certificate that is provided to you contains the correct information of the receiver as well as sender, because then only your bank will approve the certificate, and it's only after that will the reconciliation happen, and you will be exempt from paying GST. Now, moving on, as we've discussed some of the concerns, so if we try to summarize what these concerns are, the first one is, of course, the complexity. International business is not easy. There are complications from starting from the type of business that you are into, the services that you provide, the presence of your client, the countries in which your client and you are located, and ultimately it boils down to the payments. So you've delivered everything, now you want to receive a payment. How will you do that? So it's very important that you think through about all these complexities in advance, and you plan in advance, and you select the right payment method for yourself. Only then will you be able to handle these complexities that arise at each stage of your business. Following from this is the issue of customized payment solution. Now, let's take a profile of a service exporter from India. Imagine there's a company which has a monthly turnover from international business of about $50,000. And this company has clients in the US, in Europe, in Africa, Australia, China, etc. Multiple countries. So what this essentially does in the case of payments is that different countries have different banking infrastructure or financial infrastructure. Not every country uses the same bank transfer methods, or not every country has the same card payment infrastructure. So you will need to have a payment method that assists all the payment types, that supports all kinds of payments. It could be bank transfer, it could be local bank transfer, it could be wire transfer, it could be credit card payment, debit card payment, direct debit, etc. So it's very important to choose a payment platform that handles or manages or supports all these payment methods. Then the fourth one, we talked about hidden costs and Forex rates. When you, let's take the case of Swift wire transfers. There's a bank account in country A, which is going to send a payment. Then there's a bank account in country B, which is going to receive a payment. Now, in between these banks, in the case of a Swift wire transfer, there are multiple banks that are involved. Typically, in your bank statement, you won't see these banks. But what you will definitely see is that you've lost a lot of money in hidden costs. So intermediary banks will take their fees because they are supporting these payments. There will be landing fees because sometimes, sometimes to support your bank, there's an adjacent bank which receives the money and sends to your bank account at last. This is called a landing bank. Here, there could be landing fees, which you won't see on your statement, but what you'll see is, again, you will see a reduction in your amount that you were supposed to receive. Then comes the issue of foreign exchange rates. Let's take the example of USD to INR. Now you've received, let's say, $10,000 for the services you provide. And at the moment when the $10,000 is supposed to go to your bank account, imagine that a dollar is trending at 70 rupees. But at the end of the day, when you finally get a statement from either your bank or your payment service provider, your payment gateway, you see that the currency conversion rate that your payment service provider charged was not 70, but it was probably 68 or 67. And we have seen 65 or even 60 in cases. So even if you remove 10 rupees from 70 rupees as currency conversion fee, it's almost 15%. In fact, it's much more than that. So you need to be sure that your payment service provider is not charging excessive fees in the name of currency conversion. Finally, we reach the stage of compliance, GST, etc. Here, you need to be sure that, and this has to be done in advance. You cannot wait for a payment to come in and then check with your payment platform that whether they provide an FIRC, a digital FIRC, or a physical copy of an FIRC. You need to ensure in advance that your payment service provider provides an FIRC for every payment that you will get through them. So these are some of the challenges as we discussed. Let's move on. Okay, now let's dive deep into Bankwire, which is Swift Bankwire. Swift, I have said Swift multiple times. Swift is the international wire network that banks use to transfer funds from one bank to the other, typically from in one country to the other. So that's Swift. Now, let's take a look at the comparison between Swift Bankwire and local bank transfer. In the first row, you will see problems with international Bankwire. When a payment happens from one bank account in country A to another bank account in country B, as we discussed, it's a complex process. It's not easy. There are some countries and some continents across the world from where a Bankwire can take as long as 10 days or even a month to process. Why does it happen? It happens because the payment processing is slow across those geographies. We have seen these cases across Europe also, and from the US also in some cases. And it typically, and definitely it happens from Africa. So it's very important that these banks at least provide adequate customer support, but this does not happen in the case of SwiftWire. You typically have zero visibility on your payment. Your client tells you that they have processed a payment on day 1, and it's day 10 now, and you still don't know where the payment is, and there's no way you can call anyone. You'll end up calling your client, who will tell you that they've already initiated the payment, and the maximum that they'll do is they'll call their own bank in the US or in Europe or wherever they are, and their bank will tell them that the payment is under, but they won't be able to tell you the exact time frame in which the payment will be processed. So why this is extremely important is that businesses in India or across the globe need funds as soon as a service is provided. So a company cannot wait for 10 days or 20 days or 5 days or a month to receive payments when the service is provided, because this company typically has to take care of their expenses, their salaries, their working capital costs, their operational expenses, and multiple other things. So you cannot wait for even 5 days or 10 days to receive a payment. And this is where it's very important that banks provide adequate customer support, but they don't. Second, as we've already discussed in the case of Swift wires, Swift bank wires, there are intermediary banks, there are multiple banks involved, and there are multiple hidden fees that you won't come to know unless you look at your statement. And this happens after the payment has been processed, and you won't be able to do much about it after that. Then we talked about the issues related to intermediary banks and how complex this process can be. So what we've seen in the industry is that businesses have used bank wires in the past, and they've faced problems related to excessive documentation, intermediary bank fees, then complications related to the need to visit a bank to verify a payment, to authorize a person who is either receiving or processing a payment, or a verification over phone call, or multiple other things. So all of that happens in the case of Swift wire transfers. Next, we've talked about the time. It would take 5 days, 10 days, even a month from almost anywhere all over the world to get a swift wire transfer. Finally, there's the case of fluctuating currency conversion fees. We discussed the case in which a dollar is trending at 70 rupees, but your bank or your payment service provider gave you 65 rupees instead of 70. So you've already lost 7 to 8% there. And a business cannot afford to lose 7 to 8% just on receiving payments. Absolutely unacceptable. If we talk about some of the solutions and discuss how these problems can be tackled, in the case of bank transfers, a great practice is to get a bank account in the country of your payer. So in the case, again, I'll repeat, in the case of Swift wire transfer, a paying bank account is in country A and receiving bank account is in country B. And ultimately, this geographical distance, this difference in the jurisdictions and the banking operations and banking infrastructure between two countries causes a lot of problem. So a straight solution, a simple solution to this is that find a payment service provider who can provide you with a bank account in your payer's country. Now, it's not easy. If you go by the traditional channel, you will have to register a company in your payer's country. And once you've registered your company, you might even have to employ some people there to show to the revenue, the tax authorities or banking authorities there that you're operating from this country and you need a bank account here. That's a time-taking process. That's a complex process, and the failure rate is high. Your application may be rejected straight away. It's very important. So it's very important that you find a payment service provider that provides you with a bank account in your client's country without the need to open an entity there. You can be in your country. You don't need to move. You can just be in your country, and your payment service provider will provide you with a bank account in that country, in your client's country. Now, once you've received this bank account, you can simply tell your client that you have a bank account in their country, and they don't need to use Swift wire or any other payment method. They can simply process funds into that bank account. So what will happen is, once you receive this bank account, you share the bank account details with your client, they will make a local bank transfer. Now, here's the fun part. A local bank transfer, let's say in the US, let's take the example of the US. Now, what we call NEFT in India is called ACH in the US. Same thing, local banking infrastructure. ACH is automated clearinghouse. Making an ACH transfer is as simple as making an NEFT transfer in India. So you can be in India and you can get a bank account in the US. Your client is in the US, and your client so far who processes Swift wire transfers to you will now process ACH transfers. Now, please be mindful that you haven't traveled to the US. You're still in India, but you have a bank account in the US now without the need to travel there. And your client, who earlier had to do multiple paperwork, had to go to the bank account, authorize a Swift wire transfer to you in India, now simply has to use your bank account details, and your bank account is in the US now. So your client will add you as a beneficiary on their online bank portal and make an ACH transfer in a very simple way, right? So that's the beauty of this simplicity. And of course, as I said, you have to your client has to make an online transfer in their local currency. Now, they don't even need to change currency. They can simply process in the euros, in USD, in Australian dollars, in Singapore dollars, in multiple other currencies, and that's it. Then your payment partner will receive the funds and will transfer to your bank account. So as I said, a right payment partner provides you with a bank account in another country. This payment partner will provide you with a dedicated customer support. There'll be single percentage fee, no hidden fees, because your bank account is now in the same country as your clients. There's no intermediary bank fee. The method is fast and simple, and there's no risk of currency fluctuations. Plus, the right payment partner will also provide you with FIRCs as soon as possible. So they won't take 15 days or 1 month to process an FIRC to you. They'll do that immediately. And for your information, some of the local banking networks around the world are called ACH in the US, which is Automated Clearinghouse, It is called SEPA in Europe, Single Euro Payments Area. It is BACS in the UK, Bankers Association Clearing System, EFT in Canada, and EFT in Australia. Okay, now let's move on, and from banking solution and bank accounts to let's talk about card payments. Card payments, some of the challenges are the same as bank transfers. You might already have used multiple payment gateways or payment services providers, and there's a plethora of payment gateways around the world. The biggest challenge that users face is inadequate customer support. So again, there's a payment that is pending. The receiver wants to know when this payment will be processed or what is the verification process that it is undergoing, and there's no adequate customer support to provide the right information. That's a big problem. Second, your client tells you that your client has American Express card. You send them a link to process card payments. Now they tell you, your client tells you that he or she has an American Express card, but your payment gateway does not support American Express. How will you receive this payment? Not possible. You'll have to go to another payment service provider, and you'll have to find out in advance whether that the next payment service provider supports American Express. So this is another complexity. So you'll have to find out in advance whether your payment service provider supports all the cards or card networks: Visa, MasterCard, American Express, JCB, etc. Then we discussed briefly about high transaction failure rate. If your payment gateway does not have the right infrastructure, many payments will fail. Many card payments will fail. Your payer will try to initiate a payment, but it won't go through. Next, with payment gateways, there's inevitably a problem of high fees. Then if your payment gateway does not follow all the international regulations with respect to financial safety and fraud risk, there's a great risk of chargebacks, disputes, etc. due to frauds. What is the solution? The solution is to select the right payment platform, which provides you with a simple and efficient dashboard using which you can send a link to your payer, and your payer will be able to use all kinds of cards, whether it is American Express, Visa, MasterCard, JCB, Discover, or any of the card networks, any of the prevalent card networks around the world, and they'll be able to pay to you. Plus, it's a great practice if your payment gateway provides multiple payment options within the link. So take a scenario in which your client asked you to send a payment link on which your client will use a card. Now you generate a link using your payment platform. Now within this link, your client clicks on the link, goes to the payer's portal, but what he or she sees is additional payment options along with card payment options. So there is, of course, credit and debit card usage option. Along with that, there's the option to use bank transfers, there's the option to use direct debit, and multiple payment options. Now, your client will see that it's possible that a bank transfer is more cost effective as compared to a card transfer. In this case, your client has the liberty to use another payment option, which could be a bank transfer. Now, this is a win-win solution for you as well as your client, because bank transfers are typically more cost effective and more efficient than a card transfer. So if your payment platform provides multiple options within one link, you and your client would get a lot of value out. Finally, when a payment is processed through card or some other payment method, the platform will verify the payment, and it's important that the platform has a smooth verification process in which it is hassle-free, it is transparent, and the communication is transparent from the payment platform. The customer support is able to provide you with the right information, and ultimately the payment is processed. So I'll repeat, it's a best practice to do the research on the right payment platform in advance, such that you don't have to face the complexities such as some of the card networks not supported, high transaction failure rate, high fees, fraud risk, etc. And of course, there's the case of compliance, wherein your payment platform should be able to provide you with FIRCs, whether it's a card payment or a bank transfer or anything else. So FIRC is mandatory. So moving on. Okay, we discussed some of the best practices, and if you start from the right, some of the best practices that the right payment platform uses is that the right payment platform has the infrastructure to support cross-border payments from most of the countries around the world. In fact, if possible, all the countries, right? Then your payment provider must be able to support not just receiving payments but also processing payments. Cross-border business is complex, and sometimes you might also need to pay to someone who is outside of your country. In that case, your service provider needs to give you the option to be able to pay to your suppliers and vendors. Then, if your payment service providers has low limits, for example, if your payment service provider says that you can transfer or receive only $5,000 in one transaction, well, that's a blocker. Such limits hamper business. Plus, it's very important that your payment platform provides you with the account management service and tax payment support, plus payment closure, which is related to FIRC, GST compliance. And as a follow-up to that, if you see on the right, you will see that if you are an Indian company, and most likely you are an Indian company, your payment service provider needs to provide you with services such as billing service. What is billing service? The service to be able to generate a link to your client so that your client can pay. Then global receiving account. What is a global receiving account? I talked about bank accounts in the US, Europe, Australia, Singapore, Japan, Canada, etc., while you are sitting in India. So these are global receiving accounts. And then FIRC, sometimes a company might need VAT payments. So in that case, the payment service provider should be able to support this. And next, ability to pay to someone outside of India. So you've received funds, now you want to pay to someone. How does your payment platform support you in this? And ultimately, very basic, withdrawal to your bank account. On the left, there are requirements related to vendor payments. You have received, you provide services to your clients outside of India, and it's possible that you also take services from vendors outside of India, in which case you will need to pay to them. So does your payment service provider handle that? Then is there any way your payment service provider provides you with a prepaid card or a card using which you can either withdraw from ATMs or do online purchases or pay to someone else? Similarly, your card usage, how does your payment service provider support the card usage? And then how are you able to pay to someone who is not using the same payment platform as you are? So all of these questions are very important to analyze before you choose the right payment platform. Next, we'll talk briefly about Payoneer and tell you what Payoneer provides in terms of international payments. So Amit, over to you.
Thanks, Mrinal. Thank you so much. I believe you have provided a very in-depth information about cross-border payments, and I'm sure it would be helpful for our audience today. A brief about Payoneer, right? So we are a payment provider. We help communities or the businesses to get payments from across the globe in a cross-border payment method. We have more than 4 million customers currently who uses our services globally. We have offices around the globe, and similarly, we support a number of languages. So let's say if your customers are based out of countries where English is not a very common speaking language, we have experts who can, in customer support, who can help those customers in those countries as well, right, in those regards. Now, moving on to the next one. Right, so till now, Mrinal has been talking about having a local bank into local bank accounts in the countries where your payers are based, and I've seen a lot of questions which are there across on Q&A on the chat as well. I'll definitely be answering those questions as well. So one of the major service what we provide is our global payment solution, where we offer our customers who are based out of India, who have Indian entities or who are individual businesses as well, who do not have any foreign entities in any of the other countries, we provide them with the collection accounts. Now, what is a collection account? Collection accounts are slightly different from bank account. These are not physical bank accounts. So your customers in those countries cannot just walk into the branch of that particular bank and deposit the cash like we do it over here in India. However, these are the virtual bank accounts in a layman's term, which we provided in the countries like US, UK, Europe, Japan, China, Australia, Canada, Singapore, and in UAE, where your customers can use these local bank accounts to pay you in their local currencies directly. Now, the advantages around this has already been explained by Mrinal, where they have no local transfer fees. They have ease of transferring. They need not to have provide too many documentation. They need not to go to their bank because this is an online transfers which they are expected to make. And there are customers who, if you need multiple bank accounts in one particular country, let's say in US, we will be able to provide you with the multiple of them as well. Let's say you want to use one account details for collecting payments from marketplaces like Fiverr or Upwork, and the other bank account details you want to give it to your direct customers. You don't want to merge them together. We can do that across for you. So that is the advantages when we talk about providing the local bank account details, and these are absolutely comes at a free of cost in terms of there is no cost to get these account details. To sign up for a Payoneer account, it's a very simple process. And once you sign up, you can opt in for the countries where you want to have the local bank accounts. And with a click of a button, you get these account details into your Payoneer dashboard itself. Right. Next one, Mrinal. Right. The other services which Mrinal spoke about is, let's say you have customers who wish to pay through credit cards, right? We have seen, of course, local bank transfer is the most preferred method where the customer will be paying, but many of the customers like to use their credit cards because of various reasons. It can be, let's say, there's a small payment what they want to make. It's an ease of usage, or they have their own rewards which they are going to get across on their credit cards. They want to benefit out of the payments which they are making. So we provide something called as billing services, in which through your Payoneer dashboard, you can very well generate a payment link, specific payment link for your customer to whom you want to bill. The customer have to just click on that payment link, provide the card details, and the amount will be debited across from there. In case of US, we also provide something called as ACH debit. In a local term, we can call it as e-check payments. So your customers in US can pay you through e-check using Payoneer services as well, right? And the best part about receiving payments through any of the PSPs like Payoneer is you can track every step where the payment is, whether the customer has made the payment or not, whether if the payment has been made, whether it has been processed, whether it is pending approval, where and what date you will be receiving those payments across into your local bank accounts in India. So these are the traceability which you get, which most of the time goes missing in Swift wire transfers, which Mrinal spoke about in the past as well, right? So this is the about Payoneer billing services. And when it comes to compliance, right? Payoneer, we have, as a fintech company, we always listen to our customers. We have, when we started off in reaching out to the customers way back in 2016, 2017, there was a requirement that FIRCs is one of the most important document which a customer would need. So we heard our customers, and it used to take a lot of time to get FIRCs from the banks initially. But with our efforts, with working collaboratively with our partner banks whom we work with, like Citi, Deutsche, ICICI, etc., we have made this flow completely automated. So let's say your customer, you raise a payment request today. Your customer has made the payment to you today itself. Within 2 days, it will be there in your bank account. And within 10 days of the transaction coming in, the FIRC document is available in your Payoneer dashboard directly for you to download and utilize it for your compliance, for GST returns, etc., whatever the basis you want to use it across for. So this is what the technology brings in, and that's what Payoneer brings in across for you. Yeah, that's all we will want to talk about in terms of our services, what we provide. And in case you would have any queries, feel free to write to us on the email address being provided. And in case you wish to sign up for the Payoneer account, there is a QR code which we have provided. You can utilize this, or you can very well go to our website and do the registration there as well. I know we have multiple questions, and I will be more than happy to take those questions just to check with Dr. Kaur if this is fine, if we can take the questions, or if you
Yeah,
have anything
sure,
to add
sure.
over here.
Amit, please carry on. There's a lot of them in Q&A as well as the chat box.
Yes.
And one
Yes,
of
so-
our member locations are also answering a lot of questions. So please pick up the question in series and help them out, please.
Yeah, so I'll start taking the questions as in what comes in front of me. So one of the questions which came was, can an international client, let's say in US, add beneficiary to his or account based in India? Uh, if I understand this question correctly, yes, this is very much possible in various ways. Like Mrinal explained, if you are expecting payments through wire transfer, if you don't have PSP like Payoneer, you can always provide your Indian bank account details with Swift code, etc., to your customer, and they can very well add. However, it's a time-consuming process where you would not be sure in how many days and in what currency conversion the amount will come across to you. So my suggestion would be to sign up for a Payoneer account, and you can always use the local banking services, local bank account details which we provide, to share it with your customers, and they will be and it is much faster than the other wires and other methods which are available, right? Uh, the next question is, Mrinal, if you would like to answer, can the receiver bank cut bank charges when the payee has already paid the bank charges while sending the payment?
Sorry, please repeat. Can the receiver bank?
Cut the bank charges. So let's say there is a bank in India which is receiving a foreign remittance through wire from US, let's say for example, and payee has paid all the charges of wire fees, etc. Can the local bank still deduct any sort of charges on that?
Okay. First of all, to the person who raised this question, payee means receiver, payer means the party that has paid. Okay. So if you want to know after payee has paid all the charges, wire charges, after payee has paid the wire charges, Indian bank can still deduct uh, fees in terms of, it could be fees for, it could be a service charge, it could be charges for currency conversion that happens in India. It could be, there could be landing fees, as I said earlier in the presentation. There, in some cases, there are landing fees. Plus, there could be any other miscellaneous charges that are not directly mentioned. So yes, even after wire fees has been paid, either by payee or payer, there are other fees also that can be levied. But in fact, in a typical SWIFT wire transfer, banks take service charge, banks take GST for currency conversion, plus banks take fees for currency conversion also. So you'll have the difficulty in analyzing that is that banks do not provide all those fees under those headings. So you won't be able to see fees for currency conversion. You won't see fees under landing fee. What you will definitely see is service charge or GST fee, but not landing fee or currency conversion fee. So banks can still charge fee after wire fees has been paid. In fact, that happens. That happens in every payment.
Right. And that's where solutions like ours comes into the picture, where your customer is paying locally, so he's not paying any charges for local transfers in the geographies where we provide the collection accounts. And then we bring in the money into your Payoneer account, and we give you a complete transparency in terms of what is the rate being applied, in terms of what is the fees which has been charged, etc. It's very transparent with PSPs like Payoneer. Right. The other question is, ACH transfers are slower than NEFT or RTGS. They can take up to 2 days. Are there any alternatives in US? The other alternatives, what I can think of is in US is through eCheck again, but eCheck again has its own timelines apart from the ACH transfers. However, for the international payments, when it is used through the providers like Payoneer, total time frame, if everything is correct in terms of the documentation requirements which may arise depending on the transaction and various other factors. Within the 3 working days from the time the customer has processed the payment hits your bank account in India, right? So it can be as fast as that. The
In
next
fact,
question.
if
Yeah,
I could just
go ahead.
add to that, Amit, uh, on the right platform, the first ACH payment might take 2 to 3 business days, but a subsequent ACH payments from the same payer becomes faster. It takes about 1 business day on Payoneer.
Right.
So it
So
becomes
the next
faster.
question is again from the same consumer. An Indian company cannot have the US bank account without a US entity incorporated in US. How does a payment service provider gets around this? That's absolutely right. The first thing, the Indian companies cannot have a US bank account. What we provide are the collection accounts, not the physical or the physical bank accounts. Collection accounts are very much permitted to be provided across for any of the entities across the globe. So that's how the payment service providers like Payoneer do provide those services to the customers who are based out of India or any other geographies for the other countries. Right. The next question is, just give me a second. What if a company provides services in various countries? Will it be possible that a PSP can provide us bank accounts in all the countries where the company provides its services? That's a good question. So, Payoneer, we provide you with the local collection accounts in US, UK, Europe, Japan, China, Australia, Canada, Singapore, and China, and in UAE as well. So these are the major countries where we see the businesses coming from. Apart from that, if let's say you are expecting payments from any other countries apart from these particular countries, we have other solutions like billing services where your customers can pay using the credit cards, their Master or Visa credit cards, or we also provide services of where we can issue you a US wire bank account details where your customers, let's say your customer is based out of Nigeria and they want to make a payment to you and you will be collecting payments through in USD, we can very well provide you with the US bank wire bank details, which can be shared with them and they can use those details to process payments for you. Is this the payment can be received from overseas by sharing payment link? Yes, we provide you with, you can always use Payoneer platform to generate payment link for specific payments and your customers can pay using credit cards and make the payments across. What countries can we pay into and collect from with the Payoneer? In terms of payouts, currently from India, due to regulations, the payouts do not happen till the time customer outside of India uses a Payoneer account to send you a link and you use your international credit card to make payment. However, collection of payments using Payoneer is possible across the globe in more than 100 countries, except for the countries which are under OFAC sanctions. Rest all of the other countries, you can collect the payments using Payoneer services. Okay. Just give me a second. Let me just look at the other questions. Another question is, what about the exchange rates for such amounts collected in US collection accounts that will be transferred to India? Like I mentioned, one of the key two things which we maintain as our core value is trust and transparency. So whenever, let's say, and we follow the mid-market rate, which are always visible on various websites like xe.com or Reuters, etc. We use mid-market rates to convert the money, and we give you the every time the notification, then the money is converted and what is the conversion rate being applied. You can always go ahead and tally those across with the websites like xe.coms or Reuters of the world. There's a question from Ms. Usha, how much savings we can get with Payoneer versus Swift and bank? I mean, this depends from customer to customer. This depends from transactions to transactions. We will be more than happy to discuss this one-on-one. Feel free to reach out to us. We have email address which are still flashing on the screen, as well as we have the QR code. You can very well reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to uh, understand the kind of a nature of payments, etc., what you are taking, and then we can definitely show you the kind of savings what you are going to do on this. Mrinal, next question, if you can answer. The Ramesh Behra is asking, the collection account shall be in the payee country currency or in USD. Is there any plausible benefit for this collection account?
Right. To repeat, Payoneer provides collection accounts in the US, Canada, UK, Europe, Australia, Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong. Take the example of the US. The US bank account will be in USD. Canadian bank account will be in Canadian dollars. UK bank account will be in GBP. Euro bank account will be European bank account will be in euros, and so on and so forth. So bank account collection bank account provided by Payoneer will be in the currency of the payer, which is how your payer will be able to use their local currency and will be able to pay to you without any charges incurred for currency conversion at their end, or without paying any wire fees. So it's in the currency of the payer's country. What's the second part? There was another part.
So what are the benefits basically of using collection accounts?
Okay. The first benefit is, look, this is a qualitative benefit. When you tell your clients that you have bank accounts in their country, it creates or it adds additional credibility to your business. And this is not my opinion that I'm using to say this. We've heard this feedback from more than 4 million, in fact, more than 5 million clients, 5 million businesses, not individuals, 5 million businesses who use Payoneer globally. When a business in India tells a US-based company that this Indian business has a bank account in the US, it adds to credibility. It adds to trust. That's the first thing. Second, since these are bank accounts in your payers' countries, your payers don't need to make wire transfers, so there's no wire fees. Second, these are local bank accounts in your payers' countries, hence your payers don't need to go to their bank to do some paperwork or any kind of other complications. They can simply add you as a beneficiary on their online banking portal in a very simple way. That's very simple, and just process funds. Third, since Payoneer is responsible for end-to-end process of this payment, Payoneer charges only one single percentage fee. That's all. Unlike what happens in a Swift bank wire. So in a Swift bank wire, there's wire fee, there are intermediary bank fees, there are landing fees, there are currency conversion fees levied by your bank in India, and then there are charges for service and GST, and there could be anything additional to that. Payoneer does not do that. Payoneer takes a single percentage fee that encapsulates everything, and there will be transparency. You will see everything that Payoneer does and Payoneer charges you for. So these are the three major benefits that using Payoneer brings along.
So, next question would be for the invert received via the collection accounts, will the FIRC be issued by the partnering bank in India, with the Payoneer? Will there be any challenges in regularizing our exports with our bank by using those FIRCs?
All right, please look at the screen. The screen shows a sample FIRC. For every payment that goes through Payoneer, when I say every payment, I mean every payment. It could be a card transfer, it could be direct debit, which is e-check, in other words, or a local bank transfer or a wire transfer. So mind you, Payoneer supports wire transfers also. Payoneer supports local bank transfers also. For all the payments that happen through Payoneer and that you receive through Payoneer, you will receive an FIRC with the details, with your details and your payer's details. And Payoneer has 4 partner banks in India. 2 are visible here, Citi, Deutsche Bank. Aside from these 2, we have ICICI and IndusInd as our partner. So these banks provide FIRCs, which are accepted everywhere in India, by which I mean your bank will accept it, the EDPMS portal will accept it, GST regulatory authorities will accept it, and you will be able to do everything with it, whatever you want to do. So even STPI, even SEZs, and any of the, let's say, exporting regulatory bodies accept the FIRCs provided by Payoneer, because essentially these FIRCs are provided by banks. You will see Citibank, you see Deutsche Bank, and there are IndusInd and ICICI also. So it's absolutely acceptable, absolutely all right.
Dr. Kaur, just wanted to check if we have time to answer more questions, or we are running short on time.
If you can see chat, we can have quick 1 or 2 minutes. If any useful question is there, we can just hurry up. If anything is left, just scroll through the chat part.
Yes, I'm just doing that itself, just to look at if there is anything which is stealing its
anything that's left out.
Well, by the time Amit checks it, there were a few questions that were shared in advance before this event. There was one question. I'll just read it out. How payments received through WISE is considered in India? Is it Forex receipt? WISE, as in TransferWise, which is now WISE. So it's not. I wouldn't comment upon any particular platform. The important factors that you need to consider is whether your payment platform, whether a particular payment platform provides you with a dashboard to check all your payments, to send links, to download statements, plus whether your payment platform provides you with digital FIRC in a timely manner. Now, from what I know about WISE, they don't provide digital FIRCs, and the process is not as smooth. Plus, there's no dashboard that they provide. So those are some of the criteria that you need to consider before selecting a payment platform.
That's it. Anything from the chat, or we wrap up the session?
I think, Dr. Kaur, we have covered most of the questions which we can cover in.
People can get in touch with you directly.
Yes, because the rest of the questions are
one-to-one, they can get in touch with you. You have shared your emails.
Absolutely. Just a minute.
Yeah. Dr. Abe, you are there?
Yes, I'm there.
Yeah. If you can stop sharing the screen, please.
Yeah, I'll do
that.
Anupamji, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. In fact, I know I was not always present here because there was some work relating to ministry. But, the speaker was on, I was listening to it. Some slides I went through. And as I understand, not only the subject was important when we talk about cross-border, but it becomes more significant, when we understand the various modes of service exports, the 4 modes. So if you put that into the context, it is actually like one of the most enlightening session, I believe, for the participants. For the first time, SEPC is doing it. And that way, I definitely need to thank and look for more such interaction from our experts, Mr. Mrinal and Amit Arora-ji. And definitely thanks to the participants and their questions. The questions I could, relate to some of the questions is they're posing. And definitely, the expert advice they could get from you. I believe this should continue for future as well. We can organize series of these programs, virtual, hybrid, or physical mode, wherever possible and wherever possible. That's the way we need to look at it. So thanks to all the participants, and any question they can put forward again. We'll reach out to the experts directly. They can definitely reach out to the experts themselves, but we can also, come as a kind of, we can also route the questions in case it is written to us. That is one. Second, thanks to Tarvinder, your team, to conduct this program, and we look forward to series of such interactions. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Minal.
Thank you, Dr. Abe. Thank you, Dr. Kaur, for providing us with this opportunity. And I know there are a lot of questions which have not been answered. Do forward that to us, and we will be more than happy to answer them because they
People can
need
get
some
in touch
detailed
with you
information.
directly. Your email
Yes.
is there.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank
In
you,
fact,
Dr. Sinha.
Before we end, there are like in champion services sector, financial services is also important. And, more often we do get confused with accounting and bookkeeping and financial services. So maybe like I'm just opening up, some future program ideas that maybe let's think about financial services because, just while the interaction was going on, there was one more communication with the Ministry of Commerce relating to the strategy to promote financial services. So let's look for that brainstorming session again. Yeah. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Perfect. Then it was nice having all of you over here. Thank you to all participants, Minal and Amit. Thank you,
Thank you, Dr.
Amit.
Sinha. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you
Kaur.
so
Amit,
much.
thank you. And thanks to all the participants.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.